Welcome, Internet, to Psychoanalytic Talk. And today we're going to be talking about the libidinal ego and the exciting object, concepts that were postulated by Ronald Fairbairn. So, the libidinal ego and the exciting object are part of the endopsychic structure. More precisely, they are part of the unconscious mind. So for Fairbairn, those two ideas go together. They're basically indistinguishable because for Fairbairn, we build ourselves with the objects, i.e., people we meet and imagos. All those influences have an impact on our construction of an idea of a relationship. So very simply, what happens with the outside world has an impact on our inner world. And for Fairbairn, what happens is that throughout development, we develop the idea of a perfect relationship, a relationship in which everything is fulfilled, all our desires for love, gratification, admiration, and so on and so forth. At an extreme end, we have what is called the exciting object. It's an object, i.e., a relationship, which gives the illusion of perfection, the illusion that everything will be fine, perfect, just everything will be fulfilled. Every single hope, expectation, desire is at hand with that exciting object. This creates, that idea of perfect relation creates within the recipient a form of expectation, of infinite love towards that potential relationship. That position is what Fairbairn calls the libidinal ego. So what happens is that the individual is going to seek above and beyond everything that exciting object, i.e. that relationship that appears perfect and free from frustration. So what's going to happen is that the person is going to be fully committed to making that relationship work. This dyad has no limits. There is no limitations. It's a form of expecting unconditional love, but to virtually pathological degree. What I mean by that is that nothing is going to stop the individual, even reason, even bad experiences, even red flags. All that is going to be pushed aside for this idea that a perfect relationship can be obtained and attained. So what's going to happen is that the individual is going to do everything they can to reach the exciting object, to be in a relationship with the exciting object. However, this exciting object cannot remain exciting because it's based on an illusion. Because everything I've said is based on our deepest desires, but that doesn't mean that they're real. As all relationships comes with their flaws, with their misunderstandings, with their frustrating elements, all of that is completely kicked out of the exciting object, leaving the pure illusion that everything's perfect, that everything's fine, that everything is going to be great. And that illusion is so powerful that basically pushes the individual to do everything, including self-sacrificing, rejecting other people that might dismiss or try and refrain the individual from engaging. They might even kick out good friends, and even in some cases, if the therapist tries to idealize the exciting object, the patient might reject and stop therapy. For Fairbairn, the libidinal ego is the greatest form of resistance to psychotherapy. And I must admit that I fully agree with him on this point, because once that exciting object becomes apparent in the mind, the libidinal ego will have no limit to what it will put in place or do to get to that, because the idea is so powerful, because fundamentally it harkens back to this very deep and important and unconscious idea that every infant has, that if ever they do things right, if ever they play their cards right, they'll end up in a fulfilling, absolute and whole relationship. However, this, as I said before, is not how reality is built. Relationships are inherently frustrating, and that the libidinal ego does not want it, does not accept it. Therefore, it's just basically going to deny reality in order to get to that perfect relationship. So, if you follow this through, you might say, well, wait a minute, because no one can stand being abused or dismissed or even frustrated for too long, and you're completely right. However, this isn't going to spark the libidinal ego to go away. What's going to happen is that in Fairbairn's meta-psychological system, it's going to shift to this idea of the rejecting object, i.e. a completely bad relationship, with the anti-libidinal ego, i.e. a part of the mind that's going to reject the relationship, hate it, and try and destroy it or get rid of it, but in a massive, uncontrollable way. So fundamentally, there is no diminishing of the libidinal ego with the anti-libidinal ego, because they're split. There's one or the other, but there's no both, and one cannot be used against the other. Both of them exist on a parallel line that never really touches. What does, however, is this idea, which I'll talk about in another video, of the central ego, i.e. that part that is conscious, that part that is more unified than the two others. So coming back to the libidinal ego, what you have to understand, and what's so brilliant about this concept, is that it explains very well why, for example, abused people go back to abusive partners, why people who have been victim to so much hate and heinous and terrible treatment go back to people that do that to them. It's because what happens is that those people, the predators, the aggressors, create in the individual the illusion that they can become the exciting object. They create the allure of something that can be perfect. If we just try it enough, if you just give me a second chance, if you just slightly do what I want, everything can be great. Our relationship can be the best. Our relationship can be the top of the top, and there will be nothing to be frustrating. And even though it sounds stupid when I say it like this, for the individual experiencing it on an emotional level, it's so enticing, it's so exciting to have this prospect of a perfect relationship that basically the person gets blinded towards the exciting object, as if the exciting object was a sun, and that the libidinal ego was Icarus, just flying too close and just burning down in a way. So fundamentally, that dyad is what explains abusive relationships and why they are unfortunately so hard to basically disentangle, because the individual experiencing them is experiencing a deep emotional uproar of hope, but the hope that's so powerful, intense, it becomes an illusion. And as a mirage, they go for it, and then they suffer consequences. Because the abuser knows how to present and knows how to play on this idea of the exciting object, knows how to present it. Therefore, it creates that within the individual. And I am by no means, and this is very important, blaming the person that is experiencing the libidinal ego. Because to an extent, the libidinal ego is part of normalcy. Falling in love is basically a triggering of the libidinal ego, as it is, at least at the very beginning of love, that this idea that finally we've found the one, finally we've found the individual that is going to complete us. Therefore, there is that element. However, what happens in, let's say, normal or classic forms of love is that what's going to fundamentally develop is that slowly but surely this ideal that is set by the exciting object is going to decrease, and it's going to become, at the very core, part of an ideal object. It's badly chosen, the word, but the idea of Fairbairn is that it's an object that is basically a bit frustrating, but it's okay, because the relationship survives and the relationship still remains relatively positive. And what happens is that the state of the person shifts from libidinal ego in which everything has to be put in place in order to get the relationship, to a state in which basically the individual understands the limitations of the object and also their own. Therefore, there's no more any sacrifice or egregious forms of sacrifice. I mean, like basically accepting to, like, I don't know, give up all the savings to the other, or basically give up one's children for the other, and so on and so forth. It's a much more stable form of love. And this is why the libidinal ego can then, in a way, be integrated by the central ego, by the stable part of oneself. But in the first moments of that uproar, it's very complicated because it is based on a form of illusion that our every need will be satisfied with the relationship with others, which is on an unconscious level something that every human being has, more or less, but still very present. Therefore, giving up that illusion is very complicated for anyone, right? We're not talking about just people that have been abused, but people who have been abused have often been basically fed illusions of eternal love and belittled, insulted, violence, and so on and so forth, which have sparked that dynamic anti-libidinal ego, or the other way around, right? So it's a cycle. And the problem is with the libidinal ego is that it cannot be used to distance oneself from the other. Therefore, it's what cements this dyad of repetition, this dyad of suffering, because of this fundamental illusion, but allure of complete, fulfilling relationships from the exciting object. Therefore, it is, and I said this before, but it bears repeating, one of the hardest things to work with a patient in psychotherapy, because giving up this absolute, ideal, perfect, and absolute relationship is basically very complicated, because in the exciting object, there's this, again, mirage that every wrong can be corrected, that every wrong can become a right. And even though on the surface it might seem foolish, unconsciously it weighs so much in the mind of the patient. So basically this is it for the libidinal and exciting object dynamic. I hope you found the video interesting, and if you have anything you want to say, please leave a comment. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.